Hey y'all, welcome back to our very bookish channel. My name is Amanda. I run this channel with my friend Jen. And in today's video, we are doing a mid-year freakout tag. Jen and I are really excited about doing this video because it's fun to stop midway in the year and look back on the books that you've read and kind of remember and reminisce about the ones that you loved and then, feel, why did I read that book and waste my time about the ones that you hated? And we saw Mid-Year Freakout tag going around YouTube, and we thought, you know what, let's just do that. So we are pulling some prompts from the Mid-Year Freakout tag, but we are also adding some of our own prompts in there to kind of talk about some of the books we have read so far this year.
Hey guys, it's July. We're deep into summer, and with July means that it's about mid-year. Technically, when we put this out, it will be definitely past the mid-year point. So much has happened already in the first 6 months of the year, and me and Amanda wanted to do some kind of mid-year recap. And she had mentioned that a lot of people were doing a mid-year freakout with a bunch of tags. So we came up with a bunch of tags that we're going to go over, and I'm excited because I went through all the questions, and it's just something that I like to do is evaluate everything that I have read so far this year and then kind of see what else I want to do for the rest of the year with the books that I'm reading. I have a feeling that a lot of people like to do that kind of thing too. And I did watch a couple of the mid-year freakout tags just to see what people are talking about. And I always love seeing other booktube creators talk about some of the same books that I've been reading and their thoughts. Sometimes I feel really vindicated when I see other people talk about books that I either really loved or maybe I didn't like so much. I am excited about doing this video today. We are going to do some statistics first. So the number of books I've read so far this year feels kind of crazy because last year I feel like I was in a couple book slumps. Work was just overwhelming. I was tired a lot at the beginning of the summer of 2023. And I remember my June of 2023, I literally got 3 books, and I felt like a struggle to get through 3 books in that month. But this year, I kept feeling that I was going to hit another book slump, but instead I keep flying through books. As of July 15th, I will hit, because I'm almost done with 2 books, so I will be just under 60 books for the year so far at 59, and that just kind of boggles my mind. I have books keeping me up at night wanting to turn pages, which helps. Freida McFadden is definitely one of the reasons I fly through her books. There are 2 of those are kids' books that I read, which is Wizard of Oz and Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That helps the number go up. But otherwise, I've just been picking a lot of books that I absolutely want to fly through. So that has helped.
So how many books have I read this year? According to Goodreads, so far I have read 60 books this year, and I am ahead of schedule for my goal. My goal was 100 books to read for the year. That was the same goal that I had last year. Last year I read 111. I don't know if I'm on track to beat 111 or not, but so far I've read 60 books this year and I'm on track to reach 100. I feel like lately though, it's been harder for me to find time to read. I've just been busy with life stuff. So I feel like that number is slowing down. It's a good thing I'm a little bit ahead because I feel like I'm going to get behind real quick if I can't, find some more time in my schedule to do some reading. But yeah, so far for me, 60 books on the year.
The number of 5-star books that I had this year, I don't know if it feels like a lot when you consider 59 books, but I am at 10 for 5-star books. Most of the books I've read this year I feel fall into the 3 and 4 star. 3 stars not the greatest, but it's just average. You enjoyed reading it, you didn't hate it, but it definitely didn't blow you away or make you feel like this is the best book ever. So the number of books that are 2 stars and lower is 2. Though there are some of my 3-star books that I felt like I've been almost generous this year with the stars too, because talking them out sometimes I'm thinking, I didn't really like it that much. And I ended up giving it like, 3 or 4 stars. And I'm thinking, I probably should have given that a lower star.
So of the 60 books, so far I have read 6 5-star books. So that's 10%. 1 in 10 of my books have been 5 stars. The first 5-star read I had in the year was The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. You're following Molly the Maid, and it's Molly the Maid series. And these books, you guys, the way that they are written and Molly as a character, I just love so much. I find the mystery part of the books just like probably average, but I just love Molly's character so much. The way that the author describes this character and her way of thinking, and I just love Molly. I just love the character. I love the way the author writes the character. And for me, these books are 5 stars because of her. The next 5-star book that I had was Empire of the Damned. If you guys saw my ARC review of that video, you know why I love those books. They are just fantastic vampire books, you guys. Just, it has everything that you want in a fantastic vampire, scary, horror, fantasy novel. The next 5-star read was Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice. I am a fan of the Finlay Donovan series. Again, it's more of like the author and her sense of humor and how it comes out in these characters. And, it just cracks me up, Finlay, how she gets herself in these really dangerous, kind of crazy situations, and then how she gets out of them. I also read Night Film by Marisha Pessl, and this is a horror book. And I gave this 5 stars because it is so very detailed and layered, and you just get sucked into this story and solving this mystery presented in the story. If you want a book you can just get sucked into and you kind of feel like a detective going around putting all these connections together and solving this mystery, but also in a very kind of scary way, haunting way, I would say. It's a very dark kind of haunting type scary. If that's something that you're interested in, highly recommend that book. My next 5-star read was a book I read for a vlog called The Will of the Many, and this was a highest and lowest Goodreads book. It was my highest rated want to read on my Goodreads list, and it was 5 stars for me. I just loved the book so much. I loved the setting. It's kind of dark academia. It takes place in a school, and I loved following the main character on his little journey through this school and uncovering all these secrets of the school. And I can't wait for the second book to come out. It is going to be a series. So just waiting on the second book to come out. I can't wait. And the last 5-star book I read was Silver Blood Promise by James Logan. This is just an all-around banger for a fantasy book. It has everything. It has pirates, it has fun games, it has executions where you could survive. It takes place in this fun world. There's found family aspects, and this huge journey and mystery that you're going on that gets unlocked. It is also the first book of a series, so I am waiting for the next book to come out, and I believe the author said the next book is going to come out sometime next year, so just waiting on that one as well.
Next question is number of authors never read before this year. So first time authors for me. Of my 59, more than half at 32 authors that I've never read before. That also feels like a lot. I definitely don't just stick to authors that I know and love. I obviously have my favorites that I keep returning to, but 32 authors I've read for the first time.
So this year has been pretty huge for me as far as reading new authors. I've been getting lots of ARCs that I have loved and have discovered new authors through. I've also been reading new authors for vlogs that Jen and I have books that we want to try. So far this year, I've actually read 26 new authors, and I have to say I love it. I love finding new authors. I love finding new stories and mixing it up a little bit. So far, 26 new authors for me this time.
A number goal for the rest of the year. I am not putting a number goal up. On Goodreads, if you guys are familiar with Goodreads, you put a number, and originally at the beginning of this year, I had said I'm just going to do 50. I'm not going to worry about it and try and increase that. And I obviously did beat that goal, but I don't want to put another number. I was very tempted to put 75 in there because I feel I can get that without stressing myself out. But I just felt like I'm just going to keep reading and not put any kind of number on it. And whatever it ends at, it ends at. That's my goal, to just keep reading happily.
A number goal for the rest of the year. I'm at 60. My goal is 100, so I'm just going to try to read 40 more books for the rest of the year. I would like to get to 111, but just this year has been super busy for me, and especially like right now at this moment in time while I'm filming this, I haven't had a lot of time to read, and I'm so far behind on some of my arcs and some of the books that I'm reading for a vlog. I need to catch up. I feel overwhelmed, so instead of like overwhelming myself a lot more and increasing that number, I'm just going to stick with my goal of 100 for the year and try to hit 40 more.
Another question I had written down for statistics, and it doesn't really feel like a statistic now that I'm reading it, but I had written down new habits and new approaches to reading. And the reason why I wrote that down is I have been doing a lot of things kind of differently than I had in the past, just because I've been enjoying reading so much, and just kind of branching out into different formats. And I know a lot of readers do this anyway. I mean, I always love the physical book. There's no way I'm ever going to stop reading physical books ever. But I have started dabbling into audiobooks. Though it's probably not for me, just because I end up not paying attention and having to stop and like go back, and that doesn't feel good when I'm like, oh, you know, now I have to go back and listen to what that was because I missed it. But I've also opened myself back up to, I've tried several different times over the years, and I have opened myself back up to reading ebooks on the tablet, because I've been getting ARCs, which are advanced reading copies, more easily as electronic. And I do have a patience thing where I always want to read what's coming out, and I can't wait till it comes out. And getting a chance to read those and sometimes review those for you, I just feel that I have to get over whatever it is with me and not wanting to read the electronic book. And it's been kind of, I would say, spotty for me. I end up having to put it down and read a physical book and then go back to it, and I typically have never read two books at the same time. I am having a little bit of trouble with that, because I was just telling my friend Hannah that I was reading two different books at the same time, and I started to get the characters confused with each other. I'm reading God of the Woods by Liz Moore as a physical book, and I'm also reading J.H. Markert's new on the tablet, Sleep Tight, and I was getting some of the characters mixed up. And I thought to myself, this is why I don't read a couple books at the same time as much. But I have definitely done a lot of that this year, that I flip between physical and ebook. So it's one of the new habits I've done. Another new thing I have done more than I ever have is go to the library. I feel there's just something about libraries that remind me as a kid. It's always been easy just to get at the bookstore and not have to worry about when is it due, or are they gonna have it. I guess sometimes you have that fear at the bookstore too. They don't always have what you want either. I feel it's just been so nice to keep going to the library and getting books out. It almost makes you feel like a kid again to go to the library. I used to love going to the library as a little kid. I have done it a lot more than I have previously, and I'm enjoying going to the library a lot.
Okay, so new habits and new approaches to reading. A new approach that I have been doing this year is ARCs. Obviously I apply for Goodreads ARCs, but you know, you get maybe one in every like 200 you apply for. So I have been requesting ARCs on NetGalley and Edelweiss, and I have been trying to read through those ARCs. NetGalley also has audiobook ARCs, so a few books I have requested through NetGalley and gotten audiobooks for. I have been trying to listen to audiobooks a little bit more this year when I'm cleaning and doing things around my house, not just when I'm like driving in my car. So that's a new approach that I've had this year, and which has also helped me with something we talked about earlier, reading new authors. But I've been reading a lot more and getting into reading ARCs and trying to, you know, find these fun stories to let you guys know about before they're released.
Moving on, we have 16 tags that we are going to go over. And the first one is most anticipated release second half of 2024. And I couldn't just choose one, of course. There are two that I am desperately wanting to read, and I've been trying to get the electronic ARC for both of them equally. And the two are The Boyfriend from Frida McFadden, October 1st, and the new Sophie Cousins book, Is She Really Going Out with Him, November 19th. Both of those I am very highly anticipating. Can't wait to read either of those.
So this first tag is really hard for me because I have so many good books coming out. The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer comes to mind. Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Miller comes to mind. But I think the one I'm most anticipating is The Fury of Gods by John Gwynne. This is the third and final installment in the Bloodsworn trilogy. I read the first book earlier for a vlog and absolutely loved that story. I went out and bought the second book right away. I really want to read it. I just haven't had time to read it yet, but I'm going to read it and then be highly anticipating the third and final installment of this trilogy coming out.
The second one that Amanda had, and I had to ask her kind of define exactly what she meant, and she just had written book obsessed, and she had said a book that you're completely as obsessed about, and if there isn't one from this year, I can either not answer it or pick something from the past. But the easiest way to say this is it's not just one book really that I'm obsessed with. I feel like there's two authors that I would read whatever they wrote. It's not going to surprise you given the answer to my first question, which Sophie Cousins and Frida McFadden. They're not the only two authors I feel that way about, but I would say it's hit obsession level with both. That with Sophie Cousins, I had to read all of her books, and I read all of them after I read The Good Part, which was the very tail end of 2023. And then Frida McFadden, ever since I have read The Housemaid, I feel like the more I read her books, and then also, I think it's also because I interact on Facebook in the group that she has with other fans, as well as she's in there a lot, I feel it has added to that obsession. It's become an obsession because of that. So that would be my answer for book obsessed. It's not one book, but the books of two authors. And I'm sure, I know people get obsessed with authors and books out there. So that's a kind of question I would really love to hear what other people are obsessed with. And I have a feeling I know what Amanda would say. It would have been really fun if we did this and answered for the other. Like, I would try and guess all of Amanda's, and then we did our own and see if it matches. That would have been really fun. I should have said that before I started recording. I think it's a little late for that now.
All right, so the second tag, pick a book you're obsessed with. The book I would say I have been most obsessed with when I was reading it this year was Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. That's the second book in the Empire of the Vampire series trilogy, probably a trilogy. I think the author said that he likes to do trilogies. So that's the second book of the trilogy. And I just love the grimdark of those books. And I already talked about the books. I'm not going to go on about it, but I would say the book I've been most obsessed with this year is Empire of the Damned.
The third is biggest disappointment. There were two that I feel I was very disappointed. I feel like I can never just choose one book or one thing when I'm answering. I always have to do more than what I'm being asked. But the two that I feel were really big disappointments, The Silence by Don DeLillo. I had read White Noise by him, and I loved that book in terms of literature and just how he wrote about a lot of things. I really loved that book. And that was years and years and years ago. But I read The Silence by him, and I had to push myself through that book. And it was for a vlog, and I don't feel I can ever DNF books for a vlog. I feel I should just push myself through and, you know, at least finish what I had started. If I was not doing that for a vlog, and it's saying a lot to DNF because this book is literally, I think, 150 pages. It is not long. It take you long to read it, but I probably would have DNF'd it if it wasn't for vlog. The other one is frustrating because I got hyped about this book based on other authors talking about it on the outside of it. And it was an ARC that I got, but I love seeing when other authors hype up a book and say how much they loved a book. And I believe Alex Michaelides had been one of the authors that had been printed on the book saying how much he loved this book. But it's Anna O by Matthew Blake. I felt it had so much promise, and it was just a big letdown. I was very disappointed with that one.
Okay, biggest disappointment. I have to say, and don't kill me, y'all, my biggest disappointing book of the year is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This book was so hyped. This book got so many good ratings, so many girlies talking about it on BookTube and Instagram and Book Talk. And I don't have Instagram or Book Talk, but I heard people on YouTube talking about how it was talked about on Instagram and Book Talk, okay? You saw it all over the stores when it came out. It was just everywhere. And so I was so excited to read this story. This is a story that sounds like something that I could really get into and enjoy and have a really fun time reading. And I read the book. Fortunately, I borrowed the ebook from the Libby app, so I didn't buy it, but I was so disappointed to find out that it was just a Hunger Games retelling. And I read and loved Hunger Games back 13 years ago, like when the books came out before they were movies. And I just became really interested in reading about those worlds and following those really strong characters that survive in those very, very harsh worlds, especially strong women characters like Katniss. So I really liked those books. And then when I get to Powerless, I find that all these people are obsessed with this book and it's just the Hunger Games redone. So that was a huge, huge disappointment for me. I've said this before, I am going to continue in reading the series. I think it's probably going to be a trilogy. I don't know. But I am going to continue reading the series because the way that the first book ended, the way Powerless ended, I feel like the setting up the second book to be different. And I really want that. I really want that from this author. I didn't find anything wrong with the writing or her character development or anything like that. I just was disappointed in the story. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully being pleasantly surprised with the second book, Reckless, when it comes out, getting my hands on a copy of that and reading through it to see where this series is going to go.
Next one is Biggest Surprise. And for me, it was for a vlog again. It was for the Goodreads scroll, and I happened to get 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. I was surprised for one that was the one that ended up being the one I saw in my Goodreads scroll because I don't feel like it's a very well-known book. And I just thought it would be something too that was going to be recent in my Goodreads scroll. And when I got it, I don't even remember putting want to read for that book. I didn't know what it was about. And as you guys know, I'm not a huge fantasy or science fiction reader. I read it. It's just not my go-to or something I would pick. I usually default to psychological thrillers and fiction. It was a biggest surprise for all those reasons. And then it was also a huge surprise at how much I love this book. I mean, I love the writing in this book so much. It just left an impression on me. And it is definitely one of my favorite books of this year so far.
Okay, biggest surprise. The biggest surprise for me is probably Silverblood Promise by James Logan. New author to me. I don't know. I honestly think this might be his debut novel. I honestly don't know if he's written anything in the past, but brand new author to me. The story sounded interesting. I requested the ARC. I actually got the ARC and started reading it, and wow, I was just pleasantly surprised at how great this book was, how awesome the story was, and this world that he builds, how fast-paced this fantasy novel is. I love the found family aspect. I know I've mentioned this previously in this video, so I'm not gonna go on about it, but I have to say my biggest surprise, and I think it also goes along to saying that, you know, I had tempered my expectations because I didn't know this author. So that also makes for the best surprise. And my biggest surprise was The Silverbug Promise by James Logan.
Number 5 is newest favorite character. And for me, I had to really think about it because one character didn't come to mind right away, but when I started to think about it, my first thought was what I put down. And it is Sonali, and I don't know if that's how the name is pronounced, but Sonali from Heavenbreaker. I really loved this book this past year. And that's, I think, the other, going back to biggest surprise, like for my year so far, what's the biggest surprise are my favorite books for this year aren't in my typical genre. And it just makes me laugh thinking about that, especially since Amanda loves fantasy so much. And my go-tos, that's not my favorite books of the year, but Heavenbreaker, I loved the main character. She's just feisty and has a lot of just, I don't know what to say, but she is on a mission to avenge. And she's such a strong female character, and I enjoyed the book too. So that would definitely be my newest favorite character.
Okay, newest favorite character. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think of a newest favorite character, and I have a feeling Jen might say the same thing. I'm not sure. I don't know, but I think she might. Is Sonali from Heavenbreaker. There is just something about this character. You spend so much time with her in the book that you really get to know her. She has such a kind of tragic and sad past, and she carries that with her throughout this book. But in a lot of ways, she overcomes that, even though she feels like she can't. She feels like, you know, she's just ready for it all to be over. She comes up with this plan to get revenge, and she doesn't plan on much past that. And I just find so much strength in her ability to keep pushing forward and moving on, and her dedication to her reaching her goals is just inspiring. And I think that she might be my favorite new character that I've read so far this year.
Number 6 is fave new to me author, and though I read the first one by her at the very end of 2023, I'm still gonna say Sophie Cousins, because after that one book in like the last week of 2023, I proceeded to read all of her books and can't wait for another one. It's like I need another fix for my drug. I enjoyed her books a lot. I can't say enough just how much, and I feel like I am repeating myself again and again and again, but I keep saying that how much I love her books. But yes, I would say Sophie Cousins is the favorite new to me author.
Okay, fave new to me author. Oh, you guys, I can't pick a favorite. There's so many new to me authors this year that I just cannot wait for some of their stories to come out. And I think they're actually newer authors as far as the genre that I read them in. And you know, obviously top of the mind, James Logan. I talked about Silverbug Promise. I also read a book called Dragon Rider by Turin Mathrew, and that book was another surprisingly good book. Both the writings in those books are so great, especially for authors I'd never read before, and I wasn't sure what to expect. James Islington, I read The Will of the Many, and I want so bad to start his other series his trilogy that he has out that's been so very popular. John Glenn, I read The Shadow of the Gods, and I want to read so many more of his books. And there's been so many. I cannot pick just one. All of those authors are my favorite new to me authors in so many different ways.
A book that made you happy. I decided to stop saying Sophie Cousins, and I looked through the list of books and picked one that did really make me happy. We did a vlog on I think we called it funny thrillers, and the book Swiped by L.M. Chilton was just so enjoyable. I really enjoyed reading that book. It was funny, it was different. I loved reading that book. It was also one of my favorites from this year. So that one I'm gonna choose besides Sophie Cousins.
Okay, a book that made me happy. I'm gonna say Finley Donovan Rolls the Dice. Those books, like I have mentioned before, are just so hilarious and funny, and they just make me happy to read them. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about that. Book that made me happy is Finley Donovan Rolls the Dice.
Number 8 is fave book cover, and it is kind of a cover. It's also, I don't even know, it's more than just a cover, but Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. I just think this is genius marketing, that it looks like a VHS cassette tape, and this exclusive version has, like, you know, the box that VHS tapes used to come in. That one I think wins all the awards for the best book cover. And even beyond that, I mean, there's a TV on there, the VCR is on there too. Yeah, this one wins for me.
Favorite book cover. Okay, so you all know I love talking about the book covers, and I love a very pretty book cover. So far this year, I haven't really loved the book covers of the books that I've read. A favorite that comes to mind is Hunt the Stars by Jessie Mahalik. I just love the colors in this book. I love the scene that it paints. I love the mood that it and vibe that it gives the book. And I just find the covers for this series, really, but the cover for this book, very pretty. I also really liked the Dragon Rider cover by Taran Matharu. I feel like the smoke coming out his mouth and off his hands, I just felt like that was just brings this intriguing element to the book. Like, I saw that cover before I read the book, and I wanted to know what that was. Like, it looks like he's breathing, like it's cold and he's breathing frost or something, but when you read the book, you find out what that means. And I really liked both the covers of these books.
Wins. Number 9 is what books do you need to read by year's end? We had said most anticipated release second half of 2024, which kind of feels similar question, but how I saw this question is kind of going back to, we had done resolutions for this year, and one of my resolutions that I feel I've done fairly well is read classics this year that I had never read. And I had read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, and I finally got that one off my list. I read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And something I really want to read before year's end, and I'm thinking I might do it closer to Halloween instead of Summerween, which is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I never read that one. I feel like it's one of those books I should have read. So I do want to read that one before year's end. And then I put the same books as I did for the first question, of course, which is The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden and the new Sophie Cousins book, Is She Really Going Out with Him? And the other book that I feel I really want to read before the end of the year is After Oz by Gordon McAlpine. I just think it sounds like a very original book. And I've already reread, well, I shouldn't say reread. I read The Wizard of Oz. I was thinking of the movie. I don't know if I'm going to rewatch it, but the plot for After Oz just sounds very intriguing, and I want to make sure I read it by the end of the year, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be reading that next.
What books do I need to read by the end of the year? I'm definitely need to read Apprentice to the Villain. I said this was one of my most anticipated books coming out. I found the first book in this series so much fun. I can't wait for the second book to come out. I need to read that one. I need to read The Hunger of the Gods, because like I'd said again in my most anticipated, the third book of this series is coming out later this year, so I need to read this book before the end of the year and before the third book releases. Another book that I need to read is called Bloodguard by C.C. Robeson. This book has been delayed. It was supposed to come out, I think even last year it was supposed to come out, and the release date keeps getting pushed back. I don't know why, but it keeps getting pushed back. So assuming that this book is released this year, it is a book that I also need to read this year.
Number 10 is a quote from a book you read this year. And of course I had to pick 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. And this is the quote: "I hope you will find the cracks in the world and wedge them wider, so the light of other suns shines through. I hope you will keep the world unruly, messy, full of strange magics. I hope you will run through every open door and tell stories when you return. I just feel like that quote alone is for readers. I just love that language and the writing in that book so much, so I had to pick a quote from that book.
A quote from a book I've read this year. I actually don't go through books and like pick out quotes or have a lot of quotes that stand out to me, but in this book there was a specific quote that stood out to me. And this is in Long Time Gone by Charlie Donnelly. There is a quote in this book that says, "Procrastination is the devil's way of stealing your time." And for some reason, that just clicked with me. I wouldn't say I'm a procrastinator, but I just felt like, that is actually pretty good way of looking at it. I constantly think of that quote over and over all the time in my real life when I don't want to fold laundry or there's something that I need to do and just don't want to. I'm like, you know what? Procrastination is the devil's way of stealing your time. Just get it done. All right. So I would say that is probably one of the most memorable quotes that I have come across this year.
Number 11 is drink of choice while reading, and I feel like most people would answer coffee of some sort, maybe even tea. But for me, people who know me would not be surprised because I am not seen without dragon fruit vitamin water. It has been a few years now that I've been drinking this, and I do feel like it is an addiction at this point. Something about it just makes me feel better. I love it, quenches my thirst, but I have one near me at all times. It's just so refreshing.
My drink of choice while reading, I usually have two drinks. I always have my Stanley Cup with water. I drink a lot of water, and I always have that around. I'm always sipping on water when I'm doing most things, but especially when I'm reading. I say my drink of choice is probably first water, but then there's also something very comforting about drinking some coffee or some warm beverage. I usually make an espresso in my espresso machine and mix it with milk and cinnamon and some agave sweetener, and that is my drink of choice while I am reading. If I need something comforting, something a little sweet to sip on, then I usually have a cup of espresso.
The final questions I feel I struggled with a little bit in terms of answers. Number 12 is a popular theme, trope, or setting you will not get tired of reading. And it took me a while. I had to think about it because I don't feel I read a lot of tropes. For some reason, I always associate tropes with romance. I ended up putting down entering a magical realm via a door because I don't think I would ever get tired of that trope. I love that kind of feeling of a fantasy and entering another world. And I was thinking about psychological thrillers, and I feel I can't put any of the common psychological thriller plot, I would say more than trope, I would say like plot devices, because I love twists. I wanted to put down twists, but I felt like that just, I don't know, seemed too general. Because sometimes twists just don't always, sometimes they just seem, I don't know, you can guess them, and I don't always like that. So it isn't just the twist that I like. I guess it's unexpected twists where it's shocking. I would never get tired of that. I did also write down psychological thrillers in general because even though that's not really a trope or theme, I just don't feel like I'm ever going to get really tired of psychological thrillers. I do feel like I have to rotate other books in there because I do tend to get a little tired of them at times. I don't think I'd ever stop completely. I just like to mix things up.
A popular theme, trope, or setting that you will never get tired of. There's a few things that come to mind for me right now in this moment that I am just not tired of. And the first one, of course, is dragons. I think that Fourth Wing has kind of ignited my love of dragons. I haven't found a book that ties dragons so intimately into the story as Fourth Wing has, but so many dragon books have come out lately, and I have been trying to read as many as I can get my hands on. So right now, if I had to pick, it's dragons. A trope I would say that I haven't got tired of is kind of like the locked door mysteries kind of tropes. I don't know why. For some reason, I tend to like those books, and I would think that I wouldn't like them because, you know, you're just very limited on your choices and they would be easy to guess. But for me, some reason, they're not, and I have been enjoying all of the locked door mysteries that I have been reading lately.
Number 13's favorite characters so far this year, and I had said it, I think, on the other page, and I think it's newest character, but it's the same. It's Sonali from Heavenbreaker. I just really like that character a lot, and I can't think, like, a lot of the other characters this year, I don't... Like, it worked in the story, but I don't feel like it was such a significant character you would think of that person outside of that story. But I do feel that way about Sonali from Heavenbreaker.
Next freak out book tag is favorite character so far this year. We've already talked about that. I am sticking with Sonali from Heavenbreaker. I explained why she is one of my favorite new characters, and I'm just going to stick with that for this category as well.
The next one I had to have Amanda also explain further because I think she saw it. Maybe she saw it in another YouTube video, but it's called Burn, Rewrite, and Reread. What is a book that you would burn? What is a book that if you could rewrite something about it to make it better or it would just make sense, what book is that? And also, what book would you reread? So Burn would be The Silence by Dawn DeLillo. And I always feel mean about that. I don't know why, but I feel like all books, like I'm not a book burner. I don't want to burn books, but I did not enjoy that book. So Rewrite, I would say Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I also did not enjoy. I felt it was very slow and it just had so much promise, I feel, and did not happen. I would say adding more action, some jump scares, anything exciting to it, it could help that book. I do feel like it's salvageable if there were things that you could rewrite. And then reread, I think you guys would be able to guess. Well, you guys might guess at this point. Frida McFadden or Sophie Cousins, but what I wrote was 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow, and I'm not a big rereader. It's rare for me to reread something, and it's typically years and years and years later. For example, I did reread something this past year by Shirley Jackson, and the last time I read that was, I believe, in high school, possibly college. And so obviously that was a while ago, but I would reread down the line 10,000 Doors of January. I can see myself rereading.
Okay, burn, rewrite, reread. So I need to list a book that I read so far this year that I would burn, a book that I would rewrite, and a book that I would reread. Reread is pretty easy for me. I am not a big rereader. I don't reread a lot of books often, but I will definitely reread Empire of the Damned. I know that there's another book in the trilogy. The third book's coming out. It might be a couple of years from now, because I know there was a couple of years between Empire of the Vampire release and then Empire of the Damned. So I will probably at some point reread Empire of the Damned before the third book of the trilogy comes out to refresh my memory. And again, I just loved the story so much. I'm sure that I will actually enjoy the reread of that one. A book that I would burn, I have to say again, Powerless, because I just feel like if you want that story, just read Hunger Games. That was written a while ago. Like, Hunger Games was written first, and if you want that story, just read Hunger Games. A book that I would rewrite would be Sanctuary of the Shadow by Aurora Asher. This book was pretty disappointing to me. It wasn't the most disappointing book like Powerless was, but this book I felt like had so much promise. The description of this book makes you think that it takes place in this big circus setting, this big mystical kind of magical circus place, and it really doesn't. So if I were to rewrite the book, I would definitely include much more circus aspects, much more of a circusy setting. Lots of parts of the books I felt could be cut out. They were kind of boring. Lots of the traveling parts of the books where the main character is kind of traveling through the book. So I would cut out a lot of those parts because I just felt super bored and I didn't feel like they were very necessary with progression of the story. And the next thing I would rewrite about that book is the ending. The ending stretched out way too long. After the kind of climax at the end of the story, you get, your ending. The book goes on for like 100 more pages. So I would definitely rewrite the ending and make the ending a little bit shorter as well. So there you go. Reread Empire of the Damned, burn Powerless, and rewrite Sanctuary of the Shadow.
The next one I couldn't really answer, but it's house, place, world you want to live in. And I think because most of what I read pretty much just takes place like where it would be, just an average place, and like psychological thrillers are average places, and it's just, something really crazy is happening and people are being murdered. So obviously I don't really want to live in those book worlds. As much as I enjoy, psychological thrillers and Frida McFadden, I would not want to live around any of those characters. So I ended up writing none, because even in the 10,000 Doors of January, I mean, there are evil characters in there and I don't want to be around that. I don't have one that I would really want to live in. I would be curious to see what other people would say. I mean, even Harry Potter, I don't know how much I would really want to live in that world. I know a lot of people, it's probably the most famous one where I would hear people would want to live or go to Hogwarts, but even that has Voldemort in it. I don't know. To me, I can't see me living in any of those worlds.
House, place, or world you would want to live in. That one is really hard for me because I read a lot of fantasy stories, which would sound like, ooh, yes, let's live in a fantasy world. But the worlds that I read, the books that I have read and the worlds that I read about are not fantasy worlds you'd want to live in. They are very cruel, very harsh, very cutthroat worlds. But I did just get finished reading The Last One at the Wedding. It is an arc of Jason Rekulac's book that's coming out later this year. And there is a compound in this book. There is a very, very, very wealthy family in this book, and they live in this compound. And although the family in that book is very mysterious and dark and probably not the best people that you want to be around, I would still love to live in their house on that compound. I mean, it just sounds so pretty. There is a big lake, there is rivers to go kayaking, there's lots of mountains to go hiking. It sounded very green, very lush. There's cabins, like individual cabins that your guests can stay at. They have staff there that take care of all of your needs. They have a huge mansion, of course, lots of swimming pools. Like, it seems like a place that I would love to go and stay or live. Obviously, I think anyone would like that. Even though the book was darker and the family that owns it was not the nicest family, I would say I wouldn't want to live there with that family, but I would definitely want to live in that setting and that space, in that compound. I guess you call estate, I guess would be a nicer way of saying their property, with all of their houses and guest rooms and the big estate that book is set.
And the last one, again, I had to answer more than just one. Character you wish you knew the future of. And I had several that I would be so curious to see what would happen beyond the end of the book. First of all is Millie from the Housemaid series. Even though there are 3 books with that character, I just would love to see, I think because Frida said it in an interview, she didn't want to write anymore with Millie. She thought she didn't even want to write number 2, let alone beyond number 3. But she did joke, well, I would love to see what Millie would do at a retirement home or a nursing home. And it made me think like, yeah, it would be funny to see what she would be like when she's a lot older and what she would do in certain situations. And before I say the rest of them, I laughed when I saw this because of what Frida said, because it is a spoiler in and of itself if there's a sequel. Because if you are new to that series, you pretty much know if there's a main character, it's that main character is going to live because there are sequels, unless they're going to a different character. So I would say spoiler warning for everything, just in case you didn't want to know that these are characters that do live. I also really enjoyed this year Ward D by Frida McFadden, and that character, I would be very curious to see what would happen with her in the future based on what happened. And then I recently read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and it was it felt like it was a sappy book, I really enjoyed the story. I felt it was really sad in a lot of ways, but Clementine, the main character, I would love to see what would happen in the future with her and the person. I feel like we did warn about spoilers, but I don't know how much I want to give up in spoilers, but I would want to know the future of her and somebody. Sonali, obviously, in Heaven Breaker. I can't wait for the sequel for this one and see what happens next in that series.
A character that I want to know the future of. There's one character that stands out in my mind immediately when I think of this, and I might be able to get my answer with this character. But in Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, there's a character named Orca, and I just really liked her because she reminded me a lot of a character that I loved in the TV show The Vikings, Lagatha, who is a very strong female character, and Orca is a very strong female character. She is a shield maiden. She is very savvy. She had her husband and son taken from her, and she is hunting down her son and trying to get him back, and I want to know her future. Now, I've only read the first book. The second book of the trilogy is out, and the third book is coming out this year, like I mentioned before, so I am going to get my answers, but I really, really want to know what happens with that character.
All right, that is the end of the tags, the end of our mid-year recap. I am so curious what you guys have in terms of any of those questions and what answers are on your radar. I would love to hear anything you guys have to share. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.